Welcome to Season 2 of Control Alt Lead, the podcast from computing where we talk to IT leaders about what's moving in the market. Today, I'm talking to Pankaj Kane, Chief Engineer at Admiral, about the engineering-led culture that he's instilled in the firm, which is only 30 years old. I was surprised to hear it as well. Pankaj says that an engineering-led culture starts with a North Star, a vision to align yourselves to. At Admiral, that's once an engineer has committed code, there is no human intervention on that code until it goes live. As you can imagine, that's a pretty big ask. So we talked about how Admiral achieves that, how Pankaj has built a culture that supports it, and also how he's divorced himself from that culture so it doesn't fade over time. And as always, we end with his advice to other leaders seeking to do something similar. It's a great interview. Please enjoy. Right, Pankaj, thanks so much for joining me here today. Let's talk about the engineering-led culture that you've instituted at Admiral. What does that look like? What is an engineering-led culture?
Firstly, thank you, Tom, for inviting me. Real pleasure to come and share some of my thoughts here. Now, engineering-led culture. Culture is a very difficult thing to define. Um, for me, culture is a sum total of a number of things coming together, and things like: do we have a common vision? Roles and responsibilities. How are we organized? How does work flow through? What's the level of automation and tooling do we have? And finally, what's the balance between autonomy of decision making versus having guardrails in place? So all of those together and many more, I think the sum total of all is what I call culture as an outcome. So we've got a very well-defined comprehensive engineering strategy within Admiral, and it covers all of the aspects that I mentioned above. But it starts with a common vision, a North Star. Now, for me, it's quite an important thing to have a vision like that because it gives a focal point for all the teams across the organization, the engineering teams. It should be something that's aspirational, that's enduring, and you're continuously trying to move towards it. So, our North Star is a statement that says once an engineer has checked in the code or committed the code, there is no human intervention till it goes live to production. Now, that might sound quite simple, but it is an extremely aspirational and challenging target state, and especially in a insurance company. We're not a software company. But what it does is it gives that focal point for all teams, irrespective of the technology that they're in, to continuously move towards that target state. And in order to achieve that North Star, we've done a number of things. So we have got an operating model that allows for the need for building today and the features that we have to deploy versus building longer term capability. We've got a tooling strategy, which is cloud native, and that allows us to automate almost all parts of the software development lifecycle. We've got a career path that we've defined for both individual contributors as well as managers. So irrespective of what your preference is, you have a place in Admiral and you can continue to grow. And then we are investing a lot in learning and upskilling so that we are constantly bringing people on the journey with us. And finally, we have a huge focus on measurements. So we're looking at a lot of data points to demonstrate that we've got some value to be delivered through all of this. And all of this together is what my engineering strategy is. And I'm hoping then that drives an engineering-led culture in Admiral. But this doesn't stand alone, so all of this aligns with Admiral's purpose, vision, values. So Admiral is all about helping people look after their future, and it's about striving to do better together. So that sense of collaboration and achieving something amazing is what we're trying to do with engineering as well. And that's what my North Star is. So, and final point is one of our pillars in Admiral is fun. So we have a lot of fun. We create an amazing atmosphere for people to have fun. So together, all of that is what we are trying to achieve. If that makes sense.
I can almost see the listeners now thinking, it's an insurance firm. How much fun can there be?
Yeah, I think we can look at it as a product-centric company, but if we are here to look after our people's needs, and we are there when people need us the most. That is that higher purpose, and you can absolutely have fun achieving something as amazing as that. So yeah, the the organization invests a lot of time in creating a healthy, happy atmosphere.
That's great. That's really good to hear. So let's talk about the challenges that you've encountered along the way, because you talked about your North Star there, and that is a difficult one to achieve. I'm sure everyone can agree. So, what I don't want to say problems, but what challenges have you found and got past?
Yeah, so it's not an easy thing to achieve, no doubt about it. It's very aspirational, and we wanted it to be aspirational. That was the reason for putting something together like that. And as I said, Admiral has got innovation in its DNA. Since the very beginning, it's only a 30-year-old company, but it's the largest car insurer in UK, and we've always been at the forefront of coming up with new propositions. So I have got total support from the seniors about the engineering strategy and the target vision. But there are challenges, and there are three things that I'll pull out for our listeners. Challenge number one is demonstrating the value of engineering. So whilst everybody buys into the vision, we are in a cost constrained environment. So every initiative that I embark on, it has to stand up on its own two feet, so to speak. Um, and that means that I have to focus a lot on metrics and data points. So creating baseline metrics, and then therefore then driving the value and the benefit case for each of those. It's not an easy thing to do, because a lot of these things that we are doing from an engineering point of view, they don't impact the top line or the bottom line directly. There are a number of stages that happen in between. But yeah, that's challenge number one, and it's a continuous challenge that I have to strive and solve for. Related to that, the second challenge is the balancing the needs of feature development and capability build. So we, if we just focus on feature builds, we're building here and now, but then we're creating problems for later. If I just invest in architectural and engineering purity, we may not deliver any outcomes for our customers. And hence, balancing those needs in the cost constrained world means that I have to constantly make choices about, am I going to invest in QA automation? Am I going to invest in tooling? Am I going to invest in addressing some of the tech debts or process issues that I've got? What is it that gives me most value now? And those choices are challenging, no doubt. And then the last challenge is we've got a diverse team, we've got footprint in various different geographies. So aligning my entire engineering population towards this strategy and keeping it living and breathing is not an easy thing. I'm constantly reminded about the need for communication and the importance of communication. And this is again something that I have to keep doing. And all of my leadership team, my ambassadors, my supporters across the organization, we have to constantly be on the front foot with communicating what we're trying to achieve, why it's important, and why we need everybody to be on board. And it's never enough. And I think that's those are kind of the three things that I have definitely found that they do challenge me.
So on that last point, do you find that but it's like sort of crucial in ensuring that the culture that you're trying to build here doesn't fade over time?
Yes, that is true. That is true. I think if culture is dependent upon individual, then it'll fade over time because individuals will move on, so on and so forth. So if you're trying to build something that is enduring and embedded, it has to be ground up. Okay. And in order to achieve that, communication is absolutely important, absolutely important. But I also link in with, Admiral's values as well. So one of the statements that in Admiral we talk about quite a lot is people who love what they do it better. So if we look after our engineers, if we give them a career path, a place here, if we create a great place to work and a great environment for them, if we have the right investments in tooling and so on and so forth, invariably, there is no reason for them to be disengaged or go anywhere else. Okay, and that's something that we find quite a lot. As I touched upon, we invest a lot of time and effort in looking after our people. So that's quite positive. The second thing that's quite important to make sure it doesn't fade over time is that you have to celebrate success. every step that you take that's moving you towards the target state, you have to celebrate it, you have to recognize it, and it becomes a great occasion to reinforce your strategy and your target state. And people obviously want to be part of success. Who doesn't? So if you're seen to be celebrating those things, it creates a positive environment for people to join in. And then reinforcing the communication. Communicate, communicate, communicate. You can never have enough communication, unfortunately. And that's something that I, like others, have been guilty of not paying attention at times.
I think everyone goes through a period where they fail at communication, and that can really have knock-on effects through the business. So we often talk on computing about the need for IT leaders to be able to communicate well, so that they can work with executives or other departments. So do you feel like communication has been very important to help engineering and other departments in Admiral work together?
Yes, absolutely. So I think there are a couple of things that I would probably pull out on that. So there are some structural things that force that collaboration and working together, but there's also communication. So if I start on communication, one of the things that I constantly talk to my team is, if you want to do something, you should be able to explain why it's important. And the example I say all the time is, in our personal lives, if we want to redo your kitchen, for example, and you get somebody to come in and they say, oh, give me 10 grand or 15 grand and I'll give you something, and you'll say, no, no, tell me, what do I get? Explain it to me. It's the same concept in work as well. If you are asking for some investment to do something, it is incumbent upon you to explain the benefits of that. And that means you have to get better at non-technical ways of explaining technical things. And that is a learned skill, I think. So communicating the importance of what we are trying to achieve to a broad audience is extremely important. And the better you get at it, the more support you will have. And that generates collaboration, buy-in, and all those wonderful things. But there's also structural things that we have done. So we have adopted scaled agile construct. So we've got value streams that have got multifunctional teams aligned to common objectives. And that forces a sense of collaboration, because the team, through the planning increments, have got deadlines, outcomes that they have to achieve, and everybody knows that you have to do whatever it takes to get to those outcomes. And that means, irrespective of which world you come from, it doesn't matter. You leave all the badges at the door. When you're part of a team, you're focused on delivering those outcomes. So structurally, that engages and enables people to have those collaboration across usual tribal boundaries that we may have. And the second thing that we've done is, in the engineering world, we've got a matrix structure that we've implemented. So you've got the value streams, which can be looked at as verticals, and then I've got horizontal capabilities that cut across all of those value streams. And what it means is that everybody has got dual role to play. You have to think about the vertical outcomes, but you also have to think about the horizontal outcomes. The vertical value stream outcomes are functional things that we are delivering for top line, bottom line, or reducing risk. The horizontal outcomes are, how do I do it better? How do I deliver the same outcomes, but in a better way? And again, that structural thing forces us to have debates about what should we focus on, how should we go about it. And all of that happens before the PI planning. And once the PI planning is agreed and the book of work is locked in, then everybody is focused towards that outcome. And that means it's a shared success. Everybody's bought in, and it just forces collaboration. So I think you have to do it both structurally as well as communication and investing time and effort.
Yeah, excellent point. So those are quite difficult to sort of measure the ROI or even the success of. So they're, I don't want to say woolly, but they're not like hard things that you can, like hard KPIs. So how do you go about measuring the success of what you're doing?
Yes, and as I said to you right up front, that is a challenge. Demonstrating the value of engineering is constantly a challenge. So we've invested a lot in creating a framework for a set of data points. Okay, so I've got two sets of input metrics and one set of output metrics. Let me just explain what we've done. So input metric, one of the things we've done is created a framework for measuring self-assessing engineering maturity. So every single squad across my organization goes through and self-assesses themselves against a set of questions. It's an opinionated view of what good engineering looks like. And once they've assessed it, it spits out a result to say, okay, you're strong on these areas. These are the areas you're telling us you're weak, so on and so forth. And I can join up that across squads to agile release trains, to value streams, to the top of the house to say, what's my overall maturity? It's a self-assessed way, but it also highlights the things that the teams are saying they need to do to improve. And that goes into their continuous improvement backlog. And then we assess ourselves again, and then we see if the needle has shifted. I have no targets. I'm not setting any targets for anybody. It's all about demonstrating continuous improvement. The second set of input metrics is the telemetry that comes from engineering activities. So we are connecting into our repos as well as engineers, IDs, and we know exactly what's happening. So there are data points there, like number of coding days. So in a week, how much time are my engineers actually coding versus they're not coding? Now, when they're not coding, it could be for a variety of reasons. It could be they're dragged into a lot of meetings. It could be that the stories are not very well defined, so they have to spend time clarifying those. It could be training issues. So if I keep increasing my number of coding days, that means my productivity is increasing. I'm actually doing more work. There are other data points like how much time does it take for reacting to APR requests for reviews. And it used to be, I think, almost 48 hours in some instances. So having focused on that and shrunk that down, that means things are moving faster. And so I've got a number of such data points, which is coming out of the telemetry together with the assessment is giving me a good sense of where I am, okay, and what are the things I need to do to improve. But then the big question is, so what difference am I making? If I do all those improvements, how is it helping the business? And these are the set of output metrics that we're working through, and we are using DORA metrics as our basis of starting point, but we are elaborating on those as well. So how many deployments am I doing? What's my lead time? Am I reducing my cycle time or not? There are some of the other metrics like costs per sprint, is it reducing or not? As well as, am I delivering securely, safely? If an incident happens, is the MTTR good enough or not? And that's the so what difference is my engineering making. So it's a big framework that we've put together. There's a story to be told, and we are able to tell that story, and that helps me seek investments in this. But it's not an easy thing. I'll be absolutely clear about that. It's a challenging area.
Oh, absolutely. But it's really interesting to hear about, say, things that can delay engineering days, like the story hasn't been told well enough. And that's exactly what you mentioned earlier about making sure that people tell the story, that they know why something is happening. So, very interesting to see that something that you cited as a challenge earlier, and is still a challenge, but you have added telemetry to sort of to track. I really couldn't find the word there. Such a simple word. You've added telemetry to track the impact of something that some other organizations might see as quite a soft skill. Really interesting.
I agree. The one point I will make, though, is that it's software engineering is a complex world, or change delivery is a complex world. So we are not in a research organization where you can say, all other things being equal, if I change this dial, this is the impact that it has on the final output. Unfortunately, lots of things are changing at the same time. And I think that's where I have to invest a lot of time and effort with the seniors to explain it to them that whilst I'm making these changes and I can paint you a story on that, there are other factors that might be outside my control that might not have the desired positive impact as you might be looking. It doesn't make what I'm doing bad. It's just that we need to look at it holistically across the whole value chain rather than just engineering. Because there's a lot of stuff that happens before a story comes to me, and there's a lot of stuff happens afterwards as well. And we need to look at it end to end as a cycle. But there is work to be done in this space, clearly. And I'm really open for anybody who's got any suggestions to help me. I would love that.
Well, actually, funnily enough, because we're almost out of time here, I was going to ask you for your top suggestions and top bits of advice for anyone else looking to run a culture in this way, or an engineering organization, how you're running one. It can be difficult to do, but if you have one, two, three, whatever top pieces of advice for anyone else looking to do something similar, I'm sure the listeners would appreciate it.
Okay, well, I'll share my thoughts. And once again, I'll welcome others' input into that. I think there are 2 points that I would like to make for my fellow engineering leaders. Number one is we need to look after the builders. Okay, the builders change the world. I really believe that engineers change the world. Historically, this was something that was perceived as I can just outsource it to somebody else. But if you look after your builders, it will give you that competitive advantage, that edge to be able to deliver software, amazing experiences for your customers and colleagues. And that is the USP that we are all striving towards. So please look after your builders. Please make sure you're investing in an engineering strategy and you're constantly focusing on improving engineering. The second one that I will probably highlight is that the world of technology will continue to evolve at a rapid pace. We all know that. We are seeing that on a day-to-day basis. Now, it is not possible for one to go and constantly buy in skills externally. Okay, so that could be because it's too expensive, or it could be because there's a skill shortage. Even your partners are struggling to build those new skills, and GenAI is a great example of that as well. So therefore, please invest in upskilling. Look after your people, have an learning muscle in your organization that investing and bringing your people on the journey, because they will give you that massive advantage when it comes to delivering superb customer experiences. So yeah, those would be my two things: invest in engineering and invest in upskilling for your people.
Yeah, I think everyone in IT could do with a bit more investment. I'm sure everyone would argue that.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Pankaj. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to our listeners as well for tuning in.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Control Alt Lead. Coming up later in the season, we'll have IT leaders from BT, Inchcape, Motorway, and more for your listening pleasure. Until then, head to computing.co.uk for more research, interviews, and market analysis. See you soon.